This video is sponsored by Exter. Exter is the world's biggest smart wallet brand that designs high-end trackable wallets for you to carry your everyday items. I've been using their flagship model for over 2 weeks now, and I'm personally a fan. The leather is premium, it's slim, stylish, super practical, and there's a little button you can press to have quick, easy access to all your cards. I highly recommend checking them out in the link in the description box below and use code GG20 for 20% off anything in their store. You know, lately I've been thinking a lot about the future and what it holds. And I keep having this thought, right, where one day when I'm a proper adult, I'm gonna have a kid. And I've been thinking about what that kid's future will be like. And the one thought that I keep coming back to is that, man, I hope my kid doesn't worry a lot. Like, I hope he's not a chronic worrier. Because in my humble opinion, being a constant worrier is the single greatest personality roadblock you could have in order to live a happy, healthy life. And I think this idea is more relevant than ever in 2020 with everything crazy going on in the world. You see, I used to suffer from being a worrywart myself when I was in college. I would worry about my future career, I'd worry about being popular, I'd worry about my health after I put on the freshman 15 pounds, I'd worry about getting girls whenever I went a few weeks without going to a party. I'd worry and worry and worry. And yet, when I think back to those college days, my main regret was that I spent so much time worrying about hitting certain milestones like hooking up with girls or getting good grades, instead of just being content. And to be honest, most of my memories from back then were of me worrying about things that didn't even matter in the end, mixed in with brief moments of satisfaction whenever I accomplished whatever I was worrying about. I think a perfect example of this is when I joined a fraternity. Most college kids join a frat to have fun, to make new friends and have lasting memories of crazy stuff you did when you were young. But once I joined the fraternity, again, a lot of my time was spent worrying about organizing events for the crew, balancing my new social life with school. I'd worry about turning into an alcoholic because we were drinking almost every night. Now, don't get me wrong. I have many awesome memories of college, friends I made that I'm still close with today, dumb crazy stories with my roommates, learning from smart professors, but the point still stands that I probably would have enjoyed college a lot more if I didn't worry so much. You see, I believe worrying comes from expectations. From the moment we're born, we have these expectations of these milestones that we're supposed to hit. Do well in school, have an active social life, find the girl or guy of your dreams, land a good job, stay in shape, have kids, travel the world, have a cool hobby, buy a house, and the list goes on and on. We put pressure on ourselves to achieve these milestones like, oh, once I finally lose my virginity, or buy that fancy car, obtain status and power, then I'll be happy, then I'll be content with myself. But the reality is, life doesn't work that way. When you're constantly looking forward to the future to find happiness, instead of being present in the moment, you tend to base your entire sense of well-being to ticking off boxes from a list of milestones you want to hit. But again, the reality is, those are just milestones, just the result and culmination of all the patience and work that it took to achieve it. And don't get me wrong, you should have goals that you're working towards. And most of those milestones I mentioned, you should be striving towards. But you see, very, very little of life is experiencing the thrill of finally getting there, right? Most of your life, like 99% of your life, is spent somewhere along the way. Most of your life isn't the day you marry the love of your life, or build a 7-figure business, or finally retire, right? Most of life is just a string of ordinary, mundane moments, right? Normal stuff like getting some work done, doing chores like grocery shopping or laundry, getting in some exercise, pretty boring stuff like that. So let me ask you this. During these normal moments of your life, where is your headspace? Can you feel present in the moment? Find peace in these bits of stillness? Can you appreciate the little things and stop and smell the roses? Or do you obsess and worry over the future? Planning for the future is one thing, but again, if there's one thing that will truly ruin the majority of your life consisting of these normal moments, it's worrying. You see, worrying makes any uncertainties you have about the future something to be scared of rather than something you should be excited about. You worry about the bad stuff that might happen instead of enjoying the good things that do happen in your life. When you worry too much about the future, the worst case scenario seems way likelier than it actually is. It stresses you out, and the cortisol can make you gain weight, have higher blood pressure, and shorten your lifespan. Worrying makes you less creative, less focused, it makes you less willing to take risks, and overall it just dulls and depresses all the best parts of everyday normal moments in your life, moments that you should appreciate and be grateful for. If you can relate at all to what I just described, I have a few suggestions. The first is to check out the book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. It's an old one, but a classic. The second is to practice gratitude. You'll find that learning to be grateful for the things you do have in your life really offsets a lot of the despair that comes when you worry too much about the future. You have a roof over your head? Be grateful. You have access to the world's information database called the internet through Wi-Fi? Be grateful. You have parents, friends, a pet? Be grateful. Heck, look at your hands right now. Seriously, look at your fingers. There are people in this world who don't have hands and fingers, so be grateful. In fact, I make it a practice every week to spend 20 minutes in the morning coming up with a mental list of things that I'm grateful for. And it's made a big difference in my perspective whenever I find myself starting to worry about silly things. The third thing I suggest is to figure out how you can channel that worry into action. Whatever it is you're worrying about, write it down. Then write down and execute on one solid action plan you can take to tackle this obstacle, even if it helps just 1%. If you're worried about paying rent, for example, write down one thing you could do to help your financial situation, whether it's budgeting more or figuring out a quick way to make $100. I'd suggest that the actions you come up with to address your worry be actual solid things to solve the problem instead of, say, studying on how to solve the problem. Like, for example, if what you're worrying about is that you're 21 and never had a girlfriend, reading books on confidence and social skills might help, but not as much as actually going out and being social. First-hand learning is key. Most of the time, when you take the smallest action towards a problem, it takes away a lot of the worry, because now you can start to see the path to overcoming that problem. The fourth and final thing I suggest to overcome frequent worrying is to temporarily live your worst case scenario. I'll give you an example. One of my biggest fears in life was, just like everyone else, related to success. Worrying that I wouldn't be successful enough to help my parents and live the life I wanted, worrying that I'd instead be broke or worse yet homeless. So I decided to do an experiment. I took that worst case scenario, being homeless, and really started to plan what I'd do if it really came to that. I started looking up sleeping bags to get, which canned foods I could get for cheap. I figured out where I could take advantage of things like cheap gym memberships where they also had showers, right? I mapped out where the public water fountains were. And when I figured this out, I went out and actually lived it for 2 days. Yes, for 2 whole days, I pretended to be homeless, living out of my car and just using the Wi-Fi at the public library to get work done. I ate canned tuna and Cliff Bars for meals. And to be honest, another reason I did this experiment was because I was really into stoicism at the time and I wanted to see if I could go through a negative experience like that while keeping my emotions in check and to maintain control over my mind. And although yes, it sucked, after a few hours I also realized, wait, this is what I was so scared of? The absolute worst case scenario? As in, life can only get better from here? I mean, yes, being homeless isn't something I'd recommend someone becoming, but was it really the end of the world I'd imagine it being in my head? I mean, maybe I'm just jaded because my homeless experiment took place in America as opposed to a Bangladeshi slum, but still, I realized, hey, if this is the absolute worst case scenario, which realistically had less than a 2% chance of happening, then I don't need to spend my every waking day worrying about this, right? I can instead channel that worry into just improving. I could be free from the fear and paralysis that worrying brings me. So whatever it is in your head that you're worried about, either roleplay that worst case scenario and experience it for a day so you can remove the fear from it, or just vividly imagine the worst case scenario playing out in your head and figure out how you deal with it. Right? For example, if you're worried about your dating life, close your eyes and imagine your future life. Still single, your absolute worst case scenario. How would you instead spend your time now that you don't have to worry about having a wife and kids, right? Maybe you can finally travel the world. Maybe you can chase your dreams. You can write that book you've always wanted to, or learn that skill. And you might still feel lonely in this imagined reality, but again, if this is the absolute worst case scenario, do you really have to spend so much of your energy worrying? Bottom line, guys, worrying is something that I only recommend in small doses. And if you do find yourself worrying over something, make use out of that worry by channeling it into productive actions. That's it for the video, guys, and next week I got a special video planned, so make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And as always, peace.